And we're coming to you live from the Built Ford Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason, Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan. Simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network. And wherever you are in the free Odyssey app, good Monday morning. It is over for the New York Knicks. It is over for us as Knicks fans. This was a great season, a lot of amazing moments we haven't experienced in a long time, including even last year when they got to the second round. This year felt different, but it just fell apart. It fell apart because too many guys got hurt, and it fell apart because the Indiana Pacers can score at an unbelievable clip. I don't want to sit here and just tell you it's only because the Knicks had too many injuries. That is part of the story. That is an explanation. It's not an excuse, but there is another opponent out there that did have to come into the Garden and do what they did early on this game and continue to do that, which was to shoot 80, 70, eventually high 67% on the day. So I am really annoyed with the defensive effort in this basketball game, but at the same time, Hart gets the ab injury in Game 6. Anunoby tries to play. He can't walk. Jalen Brunson fractures his hand in the game. What the hell did you think was going to happen when all that stuff ended up piling up? So it sucks. I really wanted them to win this series. I still believe that if they had not suffered all those injuries, they would have won the series. But it's over, man. And now we look forward to an off season with I don't want to say a bad taste in our mouths, but it just came down like a thud. I mean, the high we had on Friday to where we are this morning is a full pendulum swing. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, G, and I feel the same way you do. And watching this game yesterday, who do you think hit more three-pointers, the Indiana Pacers or the Knicks?
Oh, my God. I mean,
Really, honestly.
Coming into the game, you're saying?
No, I'm saying in yesterday's game, who hit more three-pointers?
Well, I mean, it felt like the Indiana Pacers probably outshot them in that department by 15, but
they each had 13.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Who had more free throws, the Indiana Pacers or the Knicks?
The Knicks probably,
by
right?
11.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, it came down to the shooting of the Indiana Pacers and, of course, the injuries. I mean, I don't know what to sit here and tell you. When you lose half your team and the other team's got their 5 starters out on the court, and you're playing with backups. And Alec Burks, to his credit, did everything that he possibly could. McBride played terribly yesterday.
Yeah,
he had a chance. He had a chance to really, make a name for himself. And unfortunately, he's made a name for himself this year in some capacity. But yesterday would have been the day had he found his shot and been on. Maybe they keep it close, but. I mean, when you have 2 inbounds plays under your own basket after Indiana scores scores, and you throw the ball away twice.
Yeah, out of a timeout.
Once you can't get it in, and the other one you throw it away.
I mean, that first one with McBride where you couldn't get it in, that was out of a timeout.
Yes, exactly. So you think about those 2 plays in particular, and that kind of gives you an idea of where the team was, where they were mentally, and I think – once Jalen Brunson goes out, and surprisingly, it's reported as a broken hand, you're like, you got to be kidding me. So the future is bright. I will say that. They brought me back. Jalen Brunson himself over the last 2 years has brought me back into being a Knick fan again and watching the team because it is worth watching because of the effort. And Josh Hart, same thing. And Anunoby tried to pull a Willis Reed yesterday.
Yeah, and it just really was. I understand that maybe the thought process was get him out there and the crowd goes crazy and he'll inspire his teammates and the atmosphere. But, the guy couldn't move.
But he hit his first 2 shots, and then he pulled a Willis Reed.
That's exactly what it was, unfortunately.
That looked exactly like Willis Reed back in 1969. That was the exact same thing.
Right, and he hits the first 2 shots, But the difference was, as we know, the result of the basketball game afterwards.
I didn't think Jalen Brunson played well in the first quarter at all either.
No,
but
that's back-to-back games, too. Not to sit here and, you're not going to criticize Jalen Brunson without him. We're not even having these conversations. But, the beginning of Game 6, the beginning of Game 7, he wasn't himself. And that was the difference. Just like we were talking about of what type of Jalen Brunson we're going to get in Game 5, and we saw him doing all his maneuvering and scoring at will and all of those things and made us feel comfortable. Never got there in Game 6 or 7. Never looked like himself.
Well, the other thing, too, I felt like in the beginning of this game in the first quarter that everything the Knicks were doing on offense, it was like it took everything they could to get the ball in the basket. Then going down the other end, guys wide open hitting threes. And you got a 7-footer like Miles Turner. I would just let him shoot the ball the whole game.
I mean, he makes a lot of those too, though.
And then, of course, Halliburton shows up, and he has a great first quarter, and he's making his shots. And everybody was, I think in his world, people had been questioning him whether or not he could do this at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, sure.
Because he's kind of, I don't want to say the word is not wilted, but he hasn't really gotten into the game until yesterday at the Garden.
Yeah, and he was in everybody's face. He was screaming at the crowd. It was one of those moments for him. And if I were him, I would have been doing the same thing because that's what everybody was saying. You can't win on the road. When you go into the Garden, you're not the same player. The fans are all over his ass, and he goes out there and has this phenomenal game. So, yeah, I mean, there was a point. This is why this is a tough thing to sort of come to a consensus on, because everybody will be like, well, you got to blame the Knicks for losing this series, or you got to blame the injuries for losing this series. It really truly is, in my mind, a combination of both. I mean, they were severely limited because of the injuries that they had, but there were times out there for the first time, well, actually, maybe not the second time in this series, Game 4 was another one, where I felt like the Pacers wanted it more. I mean, I got to be honest. There were a couple times. I mean, early on, I just felt like they wanted it more.
Yesterday, definitely. I would say
in a Game 7 at home, which is not a good thing.
Yeah, but all these guys hurt and everybody trying to do their thing, and a couple guys having off games. I mean, in order to win that game yesterday, guys like McBride had to have a great game. Guys like Hartenstein had to have a great game, and they didn't have great games. McBride had a really bad game for that matter. But I would also say that I thought that this series turned on the three-pointer in Game 3.
Yeah.
The three-pointer at the end of Game 3 is where it really turned.
I agree. I mean, you go up 3-0 in that situation, unless Brunson gets hurt in Game 4, 5, or 6, then chances are you're going to win the series. But, yeah, I can't argue that. And now that we know that Jalen Brunson had fractured his hand, it's not like even if they had come back and won that game yesterday that they would have had any sort of shot in the conference finals. So that, I guess, makes you feel better. I mean, this is why this is a hard thing, because you look around and you see the way that things sort of laid out for the Knicks this year, and you felt like it was a little bit of an easier path, and they just weren't able to stay healthy. And I know that this Tibbs, I couldn't believe it. It was some account, I actually think it was a FanDuel account, yesterday that said, should Tibbs be fired? Like, put out a poll. And I'm like, what? I mean, fired? I mean, because everybody's going to say that they wilted and fell apart and they were injured because they played too much. Well, what else were you supposed to do when the injuries started piling up? And I don't know how many times we had to say it in the playoffs. These guys play a ton of minutes. You don't fracture your hand. I mean, if you're Jalen Brunson, you're playing as much as humanly possible because you're the best player. And you fracturing your hand isn't some sort of fatigue injury. Julius Randle's injury wasn't a fatigue injury. I mean, abdominal muscle strain, is that a fatigue injury?
Yeah, I don't know who put that poll together, but whoever it is an idiot. I mean, for the first time in a long time, this franchise is stable. And I can't believe I'm saying it. I mean, you have a coach that preaches defense, the players seem to really like playing for him. And they basically ended up having injury after injury after injury. Mitchell Robinson, Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, now Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart in the middle of Game 6. So I don't want to hear anything about the coach. The coach did a hell of a job keeping this team competitive under extreme circumstances. And there's no reason why anybody should even be thinking about firing Tom Thibodeau. For all the Knicks fans out there that are like us, that appreciate exactly what he has done and what he has brought here to this franchise. Remember, this is a franchise that has had David Fizdale as a coach, Derek Fisher as a coach, Isaiah Thomas as a coach,
Jeff Hornacek
as a coach. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on. You finally have a legitimate coach. Guys like playing for him. He's had to deal with Julius Randle the last 3 years, and I think he's gotten the best out of Julius Randle. And I think he'll continue to get the best out of Julius Randle next year when Julius comes back, if in fact he stays here. But, the coach is the least of the problems. The front office is finally stable. The coaching staff is finally stable. And for anybody to even think about firing the coach at this point is an absolute idiot.
Well, I think that's somebody who hasn't been paying attention to the season, hasn't been paying attention to this team, and is just taking those same Tibbs talking points from the Chicago Bulls years and applying them to this particular team, which is a shame. But I mean, I'm bummed out that it's over, man. I really am. Not that they would have had a chance against the Celtics with everything that was piling up, but it just was. It was fun, and it was a different type of fun. And I know that you still have the Rangers, and that game one will be Wednesday, and the focus will be solely on them in the postseason. But the 94 comparisons, at least for the Knicks and Rangers, now stop. The Rangers have their own 94 comparisons, but it's over, and they didn't even get out of the second round again. I mean, you could look at it like, all right, they got one game farther than they did last year, but this was a better team. This was a team that should have been in the conference finals. I would have loved to see them take on the Celtics, but we're not getting that. That's it. I mean, from Game 5, the result of Game 5, and coming in here and talking about how on top of the world we were and bullying them around and Dante DiVincenzo and getting in his face and talking about one of my favorite Knick victories ever to this morning. I mean, you could not have a more of a drop off a cliff than that.
Yeah, you're right. And
holy crap!
I think now going forward, though, there's a feeling that there's a future to behold.
Yeah, there should be.
How many times have we sat here after the season has been over and figured out, okay, now what do they do? What big three are they going after now? I mean, you don't have to.
You don't. I mean, you definitely need to have a deeper bench and guys that Tibbs trusts more to just have more of a rotation. I mean, I that would be the biggest thing. But I agree but then again, I mean, you can't just project that forward. I mean, think about the Atlanta Hawks. We were talking about them that year that they went to the conference finals. Like, man, this team's going to be a pain in the ass for a bunch of years.
The Atlanta Hawks don't have Jalen Brunson and
yeah,
Josh
but back then it was Trae Young who was going off for 50 every night.
What I'm talking about players and personality types.
Yeah.
And the personality types that DiVincenzo, Hart, and Brunson are now the core of this team. And that is one hell of a core to have. They care about basketball. They care about playing for the Knicks. They want to play hard. They want to play defense. And they brought us all great joy this season until they all, not all, but most of them got hurt. And I would think that, Anunoby stays here. I would think that Hartenstein stays here. Stein stays here. Stays here. I just think that there is a future here now. And we always talk about stability in a franchise. This franchise has stability. It has it. It has the coach. It's got the point guard. It's got the front office. Now you get the front office to tweak it like they did 2 years ago and like they did when they made a couple trades and they signed DiVincenzo this offseason. This is what now you have to build.
But that's our take on it, though. Is it their take on it? Because remember all the years where, like, for example, we saw it differently than the way that the Yankees front office saw it when they made it to the ALCS and lost to the Houston Astros. They got swept by the Astros. They barely got past the Guardians. They did not look like they could compete. But the Yankee talking point out of that from the organization was we made it to the ALCS. You would have thought that we didn't make the playoffs. Well, I mean, you were that far away from competing with the best in the league. So do the Knicks look at it like, man, we didn't get out of the second round again, and we need to really make some serious changes to be able, especially in a year where we had – Giannis was out and Lillard was out and Porzingis was out. We played the Pacers in the second round, and we were a heavy favorite against them. We still couldn't get out of the second round. Are they going to look at it like that, or are they going to say, hey, we got hurt. We should have been better. We got a tweak here, tweak there. I mean, I hope and I trust that they're going to be level-headed and not make some crazy drastic changes, but who knows? We don't know.
How were they when everybody was healthy? How were they when Anunoby got here, when Achua got here?
They were great.
And you had Randall in the middle of
They were playing better than anybody.
Right, exactly. So that's what I go back to, and that's what I look at. And then, again, they'll tweak part of the roster. There's no question about that. They're always going to do that. But I think if they decide that Randall is the guy and they keep Anunoby and Hartenstein and they keep Brunson and Hart, which they will, and DiVincenzo, which they will. Now the question is, do you get another, three-point shooter in here? Do you get a better defender in here? what do you need to make this team better? For 50 years, I've been a Knicks fan. And for 25 of those 50 years, I basically turned the TV off. I didn't want to watch it. And the last 2 years, I bought in because I saw the effort that was being put forth by the players, both on offense and defense, and how physical they were. And it reminded me of the 90s Knicks.
Yeah, this is a group that you can get behind. They care desperately about winning, maybe almost to a fault, like OG Anunoby. I mean, this guy just got here. He's essentially someone that's going to be, in a contract year. He doesn't need to go out there and give it a shot yesterday. And I didn't love the fact that he couldn't move, but he didn't need to do that. It's not like he's been an all-time Knick and he's in the middle of a 10-year contract. I mean, this is a guy who went out there because he got acquired at the trade deadline. He can be a free agent at the end of the year, with all the weird contract stuff, but he could be a free agent. And he's out there testing it on a hamstring in a Game 7. We could barely move. I mean, that's the type of team that they've been. These are not like the spoiled brat professional athlete teams that we have seen.
Exactly.
These guys, that's why you love them, and that's why it sucks even more that it's over.
Yes, it does. And the fact that Jalen Brunson broke his hand meant that the whole season was over. But, think about Anunoby. Had Anunoby hit those 2 shots and then went to the bench, and Brunson had a triple-double and won the game,
yeah,
it would have been 94, 60, 69 all over again.
Right, yep. 69 all over again.
69 all over again, Al.
All right, Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network.